75% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Yep.
I actually heard during COVID that went up to probably closer to 78%, 80%.
Does not surprise me.
Not, within a budget, a budget pretty much broken down is your income minus your expenses, right? That's sort of the definition of a budget. And so, in my opinion, everyone has the same 3 categories within their budget. The big 3. Everyone has housing costs, transportation, and food and beverage. So,
and for a lot of, you're showing you're single. For a lot of families, there's also healthcare. Healthcare is your second largest budget
but
item.
Everyone has these 3.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone, whether you're married, single, up,
True.
down, left, right, old, young, everyone has these 3. And then obviously everyone has healthcare and childcare and cell phone, but everyone has these 3. These days, being that everyone has these 3, my whole thing is I don't have a car, haven't had a car for 10 years. I know we joke about that. I've been able to save and invest a lot of money from
not having that big expense.
Not having that big expense. So in your opinion, you talked about living together, family. Just with those 3 big expenses in mind, what comes to mind? What tips do you have on how to mitigate these expenses?
I think that I think Americans have kind of lost their minds when it comes to not owning a car, but having to have the car. So, I mean, if it's an 84-month loan, there's something wrong. You're stretching yourself so thin to get into that Raptor or whatever it's going to be so that you can drive the car.
The Beamer.
Whatever it is, and you can get the financing. You're like, as long as I can borrow, I'll do it. Cars lose 50% of their value when you drive them off the lot, new cars. People need to understand that there's a utility and that's how you approach transportation. You want to get from point A to point B.
I don't even want to leave point A. I just want to chill.
Yeah.
But if I am going to point B, I'll take an Uber.
Sure. And I was the same way all the years that I lived in New York. And I buy my cars cash. And I own them for a decade. And I have extended warranties so that I make sure that my maintenance costs are mitigated.
Yeah.
But I look at it as being something that is a utility and not something that makes my budget where it's going to crack. So housing, yes, you can, but just because you're mitigating your housing expenses, let's say you've got 3 generations under one roof. Let's say you've got a baby boomer, millennials making babies and the babies that they make. So 3 generations underneath one roof. Just because you buy yourself budgetary wiggle room doesn't mean that you're like, God, I'm saving so much money. Now I can go buy that car.
Time to ball out on my Mercedes now.
Exactly. So you have to look at everything as what function does it perform? The house keeps a roof over your head. The car gets you from point A to point B. So get what you need.
What do you say to the people that are like, look, you only live once. I want to have the finer things in life. I want to live in a nice place. I want to drive a nice car.
Sure.
But they're broke.
But what's the retirement going to be like?
Okay.
You're like, you can have your experience today if you want it, but don't ever plan on leaving the workforce. You're going to work until the day you die if you never have the capacity to save.
Scary thought. You have half of, this is my Bernie Sanders impression when he was running for president. He'd say, do you understand that 50% of all retirees...
Oh my gosh, you do that a little bit too well.
It's a little scary.
Adam, you're scary.
Are retiring with no money.
Oh my God, I feel like we've got Bernie Sanders in the room. I'm not cheering to Bernie, no. I'm cheering because you sound like him.
50% of all retirees retire with no money. But that's true. 50% of retirees, 10,000 baby boomers.
That's true.
Turn 65 every single day.
That's all true.
Millennials are now taking over baby boomers as the largest generation in U.S. history. We've now been through 2008 and
millennials have like, what, $3,000 on average in savings?
Way less than the boomers. So you see what's happening with the boomers. Half of them, flip a coin whether they have money or don't in retirement. And millennials are trending in the wrong direction. And it's like the first generation in U.S. history to make less than your parents.
Yep.
So for the person out there making 50 grand, but they're driving a Mercedes and having the time of their life, like you said, the retirement ain't looking pretty.
It's not. And I think that one of the silver linings of this pandemic is that you've got millennials who, it was kind of a wake-up call. They're like, I don't want to be in an elevator. And even if it was a temporary phenomenon, once we're all vaccinated, we're not going to care about being in crowded elevators anymore. But this mass movement out of metro centers, this mass rush away from densely populated big cities that's leaving a lot of tall apartment buildings that are going to have very shaky loans behind them. Commercial real estate's not a pretty picture right now. But this move out to the suburbs, as long as they didn't buy more house than they could afford, I think millennials may be able to shift how they approach their finances now.
Hopefully they're listening.
Now that they're homeowners. Plus, I mean, if they're homeowners, they're going to have kids. If they're kids, they're going to be like, gee, I've got to save for their colleges. And so it'll shift their way of thinking if they start to have kids.
All my friends are starting to have kids now. All of them. So that's like why I'm not necessarily in a rush, because I'm like the uncle to all my best friends' kids.
We know you're not in a rush.
My sister's kids. But I'll get there soon. And they're all calling me like, what kind of college savings plan do you recommend?
Exactly.
Florida prepaid to 529? What do you got? And I'm like,
yeah, but they were having the time of their lives. They were the experiential buddies 2 years ago.
This is more of a personal question, but maybe recommendations of what you've seen. Your biggest financial regret or your worst purchase or the biggest waste of money, and if you had a mulligan, what would you do over?
So when I left the Fed, I had like PTSD. Serious. I mean, I was inside the sausage factory. I'm watching the printing presses go 24/7. I'm horrified at these academics that are running the biggest economy on planet Earth. Me, who's like, I'm like walking, talking hyperactivity syndrome poster child. I took 2.5 years of my life and wrote a book. I mean, I've never had that much focus in my life because I was so upset about what I saw. So I was short the market. Now, I wasn't short the market for a long time, but I lost money being short the market because I'm like, I'll show them.
What year was
those damn money printers? This was 2010.
But you were shorting the market in 2010.
No, I'm sorry. This was 2015. Sorry.
Oh,
2015.
Okay.
2015. And I lost money, and I realized that I was doing one thing and saying the other. I'm on my Twitter feed saying, all you need to follow is the liquidity. As long as the Fed is pumping liquidity into the system, stocks will rise. So I knew it, and I'd seen it, and I bore witness to it, but I was so pissed off at what they were doing to the finances of the country, I wanted the stock market to fall. You can't look at it that way.
It was like your emotions were taking over logic?
Yes, exactly.
Well, one thing I've learned from CEO Patrick Bet-David Valuetainment, less emotion, more logic.
Oh, gosh, yes.
That's it,
People are always like, you're bitter, you're short the market. And I'm like, on my Twitter feed, and I'm like, I am not.
Well, what do you think with,
not short this market.
What do you think with all this, GameStop, Reddit, shorting, hedge fund? What's your opinion on that?
That is, to me, emblematic more of, the last time markets were looking this frothy was like 2017.
What do you mean by frothy? I hear that term all the time.
Overvalued. So, right now we're in the 99th percentile of valuations on the stock market, going back to data from 1881. So, I mean, it's very speculative. But what we didn't have in 2017, because in 2017, as we ended the year, Jay Powell was getting ready to take over. He talked tough. He freaked out the markets. They're like, oh my God, the Fed's not going to be my sugar daddy anymore. He had Volmageddon, where volatility spiked the first day he was in office, February the 4th, 2019.
My birthday, ironically.
There you go.
I remember that, February 4th.
So then when his term ends, is next February the 4th, 2022.
That'll be the best birthday present I could ever have.
Unless they replace him with somebody more dovish. My gosh. But there was the Powell pivot, and he was like, I was kidding. Okay, fine. I'll give the pacifier back to the baby. And liquidity started flowing back into the markets, and stocks popped back up. So 2019 was more of a scare in the markets. And then the Fed just went pedal to the metal and started printing a ton of money. And here we are today. The difference between 2017 coming out of it, when stocks were overvalued and we knew they were, and today is the retail investor. We didn't have retail participation a few years ago.
At the level it is now.
Now it's a fifth of volume. And they're buying calls. They're not even buying the underlying stocks. So they're juicing volumes. They're juicing liquidity. Everybody talks about, Biddy and GameStop and AMC and what's being shorted next. Let's squeeze the hell out of it. These are just signs of people don't like to hear this, but the smart money typically exits stage left when retail goes over a certain percentage of trading, because they always say the dumb money comes in last at the end of a cycle. So I look at the short sellers and Reddit and the chat boards and Robinhood and the proliferation. I mean, you could. How many Uber drivers are probably talking about Bitcoin today?
Oh, it's the talk of the town.
Okay, so, but when you get there, the smart money is typically already gone.
So what's your advice? Final piece of advice with that segment.
You better be, if you're a nimble trader and you want to play these things, just understand that you're playing them. You're not investing in them.
This isn't long-term investing.
No. This is trading.
This is
trading
gambling.
pure and simple. It is gambling. It is pure gambling. There is a reason that Robinhood is structured such that it feels like two young men that they're playing video games. That was how Robinhood was designed. It was designed to appeal to the endorphins you get when you play video games. And that's exactly the people who are on it.
And some of them are going to lose their ass.
And some of them are going to lose their ass. Some of them did lose their ass on GameStop.
That's right. Thank you for watching this short clip. If you want to see the full episode, check it out right here. And if you have not subscribed to Valuetainment, click right here.
All we talk is money.